Good evening. I'm Bob Holland, Precinct 8. Hannah Kane and I stand before you tonight as two town meeting members. We both believe deeply in service to our community, and through our service and our role as town meeting members, we stand here in support of the supplemental budget request for $5.5 million, and we wish to share with you our perspective on why this request is necessary and just. While we span two generations, we share much in common. We are both children of public employees. My father was the town engineer in Shrewsbury for 34 years, and my mother was a cafeteria worker at Sherwood in the high school for over 30 years. Hannah is the daughter of a school superintendent and a fifth grade school teacher. While service was ingrained in each of us at an early age, and so was frugality and the respect for each hard-earned dollar. We will offer brief remarks tonight that highlight why we are in need of the supplemental budget request, what our town leadership has done to stave off this request as long as possible, and what is at stake. For the ease of presentation, Hannah will offer the following remarks on behalf of both of us. I will now step back and only serve as eye candy. Thank you.
I still can't believe I got overplayed on the dressing by Joe with the tie color coordination. The town of Shrewsbury is an extremely well-managed, fiscally responsible community that has reached beyond a tipping point in its ability to provide the level of core services expected by residents with the current revenue available. The introduction of Proposition 2.5 meant to rightly curtail communities with little fiscal discipline from overburdening their residents, left well-run communities like ours in a precipitous race towards the point where yearly cost escalation and inflation, diminished state aid, and well-intentioned but unfunded or underfunded mandates left communities with only two options. The choice to cut into our core municipal and education services that would significantly alter the quality of the services provided, or ask residents to help fund the community at the level to preserve the commitment to one another established as the fabric of who we are and what we value is now before us. Mr. Carney's concern for the impact of Prop 2.5 on Shrewsbury and his warning of the overdependence on the property tax was prescient. Unfortunately, his hoped-for legislative remedy to prevent the fiscal challenge facing Shrewsbury today never occurred. In the first year of impact in Shrewsbury, Mr. Carney noted his need to cut over $1 million out of the budget due to reduced revenue. And as Michael Widmer, president of the Mass Taxpayers Foundation, noted in 2011, the purpose of the implementation of Prop 2.5 to protect our over-reliance on property tax revenue has not been met, primarily due to the cuts in state aid, which has been cut statewide 20% since fiscal year '09 alone. 34 years after Mr. Carney's warning, our own current town manager, Dan Morgado, one of the most respected, innovative, and fiscally conservative town managers in the state, released his budget recommendation to us, noting that it was insufficient to meet the needs of this community. In typical transparent Shrewsbury fashion, both in 2006 and 2013, fiscal study committees were constituted of everyday Shrewsbury citizens for the sole purpose of getting a better understanding of our current fiscal situation and determining what opportunities remained for increasing revenue and cutting expenses. Several town meeting members here with us tonight were among committee members. The assessment of the 2013 Fiscal Study Committee is stark. Any further reductions would cause severe degradation of service, and that there are no alternatives within the levy limit to raise revenue. The report acknowledges that the structural deficit Shrewsbury faces is not of our own making. Yearly cost escalation and inflation have risen higher than 2.5%. State aid has been diminished, and we currently get less now than we did in fiscal year '09. Beacon Hill feels no responsibility to keep their budgets to 2.5% growth. This year alone, the House budget rose 6%, while local aid only grew 2%. In addition, the commitment on special education reimbursement is a goal, not a law, and the highest level reimbursed is 75%. In many years, when the budget is tight on Beacon Hill, they fund it at only 40%. We don't have the luxury of funding at whim when it comes to Shrewsbury or any other municipality. We have the legal and moral responsibility to educate all children. Finally, a state and federal regulatory environment running rampant with good ideas that others can pay for, and state and federal government that believes that mandates that we pay for ourselves is good government, have put significant pressures on our already precarious position. It is important to note, again, that the regulations and mandates forced upon us must be funded and complied with by us. Our town leadership, as indicated in the fiscal study report, has streamlined operations, contracted out services, and regionalized wherever possible. We've levied new taxes in the form of hotel and meals tax. We have increased fees to cover the cost of associated departments, and we have altered cost structures to put more onus on users, such as the pay-as-you-throw program. On top of the expense mitigation, our town has aggressively pursued alternate funding sources, leveraged investments from state agencies, and rezoned our community to make economic development more attractive and feasible, and to reduce the footprint of residential land. Town leaders have also brought to this body many years ago an attempt at making minimum lot sizes larger to mitigate the high rate of residential growth, an article that was resoundingly defeated by this body. Our town will be one of 8 out of 106 pension systems to fulfill our pension obligation by 2022. In addition, our town employees have taken on more of their healthcare cost as a means of keeping our healthcare cost down. And just a few short years ago, our town altered the responsibility of funding public education. Parents now pay directly out of pocket over $1.3 million in costs that were previously covered by all taxpayers as part of our communal compact to be financial stewards of our town. As a parent myself, I am paying now more in fees for my children to ride the bus than I will be contributing to the supplemental budget by means of tax revenue should it pass. And the fees paid by parents will not be diminished by $1 should the supplemental budget be passed. It is important to note that as a community, we do not ask people who use police services, have a house fire, need their roads paved or repaved, or streets plowed to pay on a user basis. For the 3,800 families in the Shrewsbury Public School System, our share of the financial responsibility to fund public education increased years ago. Likewise, our PTO organizations are focusing on providing the bare essentials needed to teach children, such as purchasing curriculum and instructional materials that cannot be funded by a school budget that is in the lowest 2% in the Commonwealth. The PTOs have funded the purchase and installation of over 36% of the interactive whiteboards, totaling over $108,000. This is technology used to teach the students today who we are preparing for a world much different than the one we entered. The PTOs are also paying for efforts such as power washing cafeteria chairs at Floral after 12 years of continuous service, and spreading bark mulch in front of the schools. Those are things that were prior paid by on the municipal side of the budget that there aren't dollars to pay for then either. The PTOs have also raised nearly $150,000 for playground repairs as the state threatened to close them, and in fact did close one for being in disrepair. The reality is we're at a tipping point, and the path that we are currently on is not sustainable. Our town leaders have been forced to make funding decisions that pit many critical needs against each other and cause trade-offs in funding necessary line items on the operating and capital projects that have diminished the ability of the fiscally responsible leaders in our community to manage it in a sustainable manner. The proof is visible in the statistics shown. Statistics which include being ranked 390th out of 403 in terms of student-teacher ratio. And while some will lead you to believe that the root cause of all of our problems is how we compensate our teachers and how we cover our special education costs. The reality is that Shrewsbury spends $2,387 less per pupil than the average Mass school district. That means collectively we spend over $14 million less than if we were spending at the state average. In fact, the fiscal leadership that generations of our elected and appointed leaders, our two long-serving town managers, and this body has shown has translated into an average tax bill and a tax rate that, when combined with the level of services offered, is unprecedented. When viewed as an investment opportunity, which is truly what this discussion boils down to, we are being asked if the average single-family home owner in Shrewsbury can afford to invest an additional $1.16 per day to preserve what we have. What is even more remarkable about our current situation is that we live in what is commonly referred to as a bedroom community. As Dan Morgado illustrated at our special town meeting a few weeks ago when we voted on zoning articles relative to the redevelopment of the former Spags property, we have a very narrow band of commercial industrial land. The financial significance of this can be seen in this slide. For every dollar in property tax revenue collected from a residential property tax owner, it costs the town between $1.12 and $1.42 to provide services. In other words, we as residents are cost centers. Conversely, for every dollar that we collect from a commercial industrial property taxpayer, it only costs the town between 45 and 53 cents to service them. In other words, they're profit centers. This is why the town has been so aggressive in rezoning residential or state and federal owned land to commercial use. However, it is important to note two things. First, we would need to develop 4 projects the size and scope of Northborough crossings to replicate the $5.5 million in tax revenue needed to supplant the supplemental budget request. And we do not have the land parcels of that aggregate size to even contemplate that. Secondly, because our tax rate is lower than all of our surrounding communities, we must have more commercial development to equal the same tax revenue. Fellow town meeting members, the people who we have elected and the people who we have appointed and the people who we have hired to manage our community have all indicated with deep reluctance, but without reservation, that this supplemental budget request is necessary and just. We are but a few short years away from the retirement of our town manager. We have been under continuous fiscal leadership of 2 fiscally conservative town managers for 57 years. If we do not provide this additional $5.5 million in capacity, we will be seeking as our next town manager someone to oversee the dismantling of a once great community. I know of no top-tier administrators or educators who will seek to serve in that capacity. Mr. Holland and I respectfully ask for your support for Article 6. Thank you.